Thank you all for coming out tonight. This is a meeting of the Capital Design Advisory Committee, which is a joint St. Mary's College and St. Mary's City Museum committee that includes members from the community. The purpose is to get feedback from the community about various projects that the college and or the museum are moving forward with. The members of the CDA are here tonight. I'm Chip Jackson. I am the Vice President of Business and Finance at St. Mary's College of Maryland and co-chair. The other co-chair is Gina Fodden, who's the Executive Director of the museum. Pete Himmelhaber, Ray Dodson, Bob Lewis, Ingrid Swan, Jim Harden, and that's it. Okay, I've got everyone here. So we appreciate you coming out tonight. Our agenda includes an update on our Route 5 project. We've talked about Route 5 for a number of years with the community, and Dan Brannigan, who's our Associate Vice President of Facilities, will give an update on the progress of that project. Construction should start soon. An update on the Anne Arundel Hall project, where, as you've noticed, the building is torn down, and we're finishing up parking lots right now and start construction soon. Gina Fodden will talk about a few projects at the city, at the museum, the Calvert House, Chancellor's Point, and the Interpretive Center project. And then Bob Lewis will give an update on the St. Mary's River Watersheds Association's oyster reef. The meeting tonight is being videotaped, thanks to our students who are here to videotape, and we will post the videotape on the Capital Design Advisory website, which is on the college website. If you simply Google the college website for CDA, it will take you immediately there, and you can see the video of this and see lots of information that we've posted on that website over the years since we've had these meetings, I guess the past 3 or 4 years now. If you have cell phones, I ask you to put them on vibrate or turn them off, and I will do the same myself. After each presentation, there's each of the 6 presentations, there will be an opportunity for questions and comments. So we ask that you wait for raising your hand for comments until each presentation is done, and then we'll go to the next presentation. The Capital Design Advisory Committee members will hang around for a few minutes after we're done and have some conversation, and all the feedback that we get from these meetings then goes to help the museum and the college leadership and our governing boards in moving forward with decisions about projects. Thank you, and at this point, Dan.
Good evening. I'm going to give you a quick overview of our Route 5 traffic calming project, Phase 1. I'll go over that first. If you've been here to our past meetings, I'm sorry that I'll bore you because this is the exact same presentation I gave a year ago. So bear with me. So this is what's planned. Right now, currently, we have opened bids in December, and we had a good array of bidders. WM Davis up in Leonardtown is the low bidder, and we are now just waiting for the State Highway Administration to give us permission to go ahead and award the contract. So this is what we bid, and I'll go through it very quickly with you. So this is St. John's Pond and Route 5, and this is where St. John's Pond goes through the road, under the road out to the river. And there's the rowing house and the boathouse, River Center. So we will be moving the existing crosswalk that's down by the statue. That's going to go away completely, and it's going to move up here to this intersection where people are crossing anyway. We'll have a new sidewalk that will connect to our footbridge right here at St. John's Pond. We'll have sidewalks running down both sides of the road. The yellow dots are street lights, so these are like our campus standard light poles that you see, but these are taller. These are 18 foot and quite a bit brighter. So these are designed for streets, not for sidewalks. Right here, we're going to realign Trinity Church Road. So right now, Trinity Church Road kind of follows where this light green is. So it's kind of, if you're coming from the northbound, it's kind of like an exit ramp onto Trinity Church Road. You don't really have to slow down. You can just go whipping down that road at a high rate of speed. And of course, we have no sidewalks on this road as of yet. We do have plans in the far future to try and do that, but not quite yet. So we're going to realign this road so that it actually turns and we'll have like a 90-degree intersection. That also will allow cars who want to come down Trinity Church Road to make a right-hand turn will be able to make that turn safely. Right now, you're at such an acute angle that you have to literally, if you have a larger vehicle, you're turning into the oncoming lane of traffic to make that turn. So this will eliminate that. There's another crosswalk there, and there's a small little, what's called a mountable island. So it's not with a hard curb. So a large truck, if it was, you know, a big charter bus or something, could literally drive on top of that. Kind of like you see it at the circles, the rotaries in the county, where it's not a hard curb, it's a mountable curb. So the fire department asked for that, and we made sure that they got that. And then this is the crosswalk up at the River Center. Right here is the entrance to the post office. So the post office, the sidewalk goes across, and it'll be all ADA, you know, curb cuts and everything. And it continues down to the main crosswalk right here. And that'll be, originally we were going to do these with real brick, and SHA said no, that would be too much of a maintenance. So then we went to a stamped concrete, and that was too expensive. So now it's a stamped asphalt. So it will still look like brick, very similar to what's over in, I think over in Solomon's near the Marine Museum, where it looks like brick, but it's really not. And then we'll be, the road doesn't narrow, by the way, just so you know. The drivable lanes are today 12-foot wide, and they will remain 12-foot wide. We're not playing with the drivable lanes. The shoulders will most of the, let me go back a sec. So the sidewalk goes on where the shoulders are now. So you have a 12-foot lane right now and like a 9-foot shoulder. What we'll end up with is a 12-foot lane, a 4-foot bike path shoulder, bike lane shoulder, and then a 5-foot sidewalk with curb. And then as you go further south past the crosswalk, where it's green, that's where we'll cut the shoulder back some to eliminate some of the hard surface for environmental reasons. And you know that big giant concrete swale that's on that side of the road that if you drove off your car would be like this. That gets filled in and it becomes a much more, it's still a swale for drainage, but it's not a big concrete, it's all grass and it leads down. And then this is the existing Campus Center Drive, so this is where the project will terminate. And then, as you probably have seen, and we'll talk about this in just a second, the new driveway is going to be up here. So that's phase one. Does anybody have any questions about phase one before I go to phase two? Yes, sir.
Tell us something about the lights on the road there, the yellow spots. I mean, are they focused downward?
Yes, these lights will have so they're not the light pollution type lights. So the light, it's got a cap on it in the top, and then the light is these are the high pressure sodium vapor. So these are not the low pressure sodium, which are the bright orange ones. These are the ones that SHA typically uses on their highways. So they have they like that particular tint because it provides the highest level of definition. When you go to the really bright white ones, same way as people who hunt wear those yellow glasses because it gives them better black and white definition. These lights have a slight tint to that, but it's not that yellow orange light. Yes, sir.
Just to clarify, the bike lanes will be taking over the shoulder, is that correct?
Yes, whereas now approximately a 9-foot wide shoulder, that becomes 4 foot of bike lane and 5 foot of sidewalk. Yes.
Why is the Campus Center Drive being moved? Is it to line up with?
Well, we'll go through. Can I hold that off till we get to the parking lot? Because I'm going to talk about the parking lot. Yes, sir.
Any lessons learned why that might have been a concrete culvert to start with, like erosion?
Well, probably was. I mean, absolutely. There's, you know, that was built back, don't quote me, like 1930, when they were having the tricentennial for St. Mary's City, and they built a bypass, you know, Trinity Church Road State. That was Route 5 through the city of St. Mary's, and they built the bypass, if you can imagine such a thing, around St. Mary's City. So in those days, nobody cared about runoff into the rivers and the bays, so they just put a hard concrete swale, made, you know, inexpensive construction, served the purpose. And there's all kinds of, you know, along that road over time, you can see where there are, you know, drainage ditches that, you know, from catching rain and culverts and other parts of the road, with pipes coming underneath the road that go right into that ditch. So
Seems like there's probably a lot of water that runs down that, you know, from Lawrenceville or whatever the road, and fairly steep there, so, you know, would it be causing an erosion problem without the concrete liner? That's what I'm getting at.
yeah.
I understand that, you know, it's more natural to have grass filtering and all that if it's not eroding.
Right. Well, we will, we've not seen any, by eliminating, you'll see when part of what we're doing with this parking lot you're going to see is going to eliminate a whole ton of drainage. So, you know, where we have, you know, essentially hard surfaces, you know, all in here now, that a lot of that becomes pervious surface. So you eliminate a lot of that. A lot of the drainage that's in this ditch now actually came from, it's gone now, from Anne Arundel Hall. All the rain leaders on Anne Arundel Hall went to underground pipes, and they either went out this corner down this way, and they came out, and you'll see where there were pipes coming out in the road down there, or they came out down below by the post office where that kind of swale where the willow tree is, and there's a storm drain there, and it caught that one.
It's a good question. The civil engineers that design these things, they calculate the drainage area, the quantity and the velocity of the rainwater, and estimate there's certain limits to when the quantity and the velocity would be too great for a grass swale. They think that this fits within those criteria.
Could I just ask the cameraman, can you hear the questions that they're asking?
I can hear the questions, but if the microphone could be passed around, that would be ideal.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I could repeat the question. That would be easier. Or Lisa's got a microphone in the back, so this is our first time doing this videotaping. Any other questions? And I'll go on to phase 2, which is just one slide, but I'm really happy to announce that we applied for and have received a grant, a federal grant through State Highway Administration. It's called a Transportation Alternative Program Grant, or TAP grant, to construct the second phase of traffic calming, which is a bicycle pedestrian trail that will go from St. John's Pond all the way up to the North Field. And there's about a 700-foot bridge that has to cross Fisher's Creek and the marsh area. Now, this will not have any effect whatsoever in terms of doing anything to the road. We're not touching this is all going to be on college property, so it won't be anything there, but it will take, our biggest concern, of course, is that this whole stretch of road, there are no pedestrian pathways or bicycle pathways, and right now when you get to this particular box culvert, it's not wide, it's less like 18 inches. And so we have a lot of our students and me at lunchtime going up this way and dodging the traffic. So that's the goal here, is to get pedestrians off of that road. So this is a $1.7 million grant, and we have to put a $435,000 match to it. So it's a total of like $2.2 million project. Well, the design is already 30% done. We had to do the design to 30% in order to apply for the grant. So we're at that point, so we'll be starting on finishing the design this summer, and then construction we hope to be in the next construction cycle next spring and summer. Archaeology, we've worked closely with Gina Fodden's group from the city on this. So the only place where we're a little concerned about archaeology is up here on the North Field where the old sites are. So we probably will not do this exact path. We'll probably try and come this way. And we always try and do our sidewalks in archaeological areas where they're built up on top or laying, where we're not cutting into the ground, we're building up on top of the ground. So the archaeology underneath is actually protected. Any questions on that. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, the pedestrian bridge at the traffic bridge, is it the same clearance height underneath?
Oh, we're not at that level. It'll actually probably be higher. I think because of storm surge, and then there's another interesting issue that we have to, because this
So boat and kayak, the concern is.
yeah, you'll be able to get kayaks, whatever you can get under this culvert, you'll get under that bridge without any problems. Sir?
So the $1 million federal grant has been used for phase one, and that's already in place. And this is, phase two would be a combination of a state grant and a
match.
Who's doing the match?
It'll come from either, other than federal funds, let me say that. The college is prepared to match. We're looking into seeing if we can do it through state funding. Any other questions? Okay, then I'll move to the next project. So this is our Anne Arundel Hall project. The Millfield parking lot is part of the initial phase. We did the parking lot and the demolition of the building. So right now you see this is phase one from this line going this way. So this is all phase one right in here. And then this will be phase two, and then this is the existing, I'm sorry, this is phase two, and this is the existing parking lot that's in purple. Right now, we're just waiting for the weather to break. It's taken a long time. It's all weather at this point. We're just waiting for asphalt to open up. It's not been a kind winter. We've had so many nice winters the last few years, and the winter we picked to do this has not turned out well. So as soon as we get that done, we're ready to go. This parking lot, now this moves, Ingrid, to your question, so the entrance moves to line up with State House Road so that we'll have a true four-way intersection, so you don't have this stagger where right now you have people trying to drive around, people making a left turn, and then there's somebody making a right turn, 50 feet down the road, and it's just not a good setup. This also was designed so right now, if you've ever watched our large 18-wheel trucks that are bringing food to the campus center, they kind of stop in the middle of the road right now and then slowly stop all the traffic and back up down the road all the way there. So now they can pull straight in, and you notice there's a curve in this part of the driveway, and it curves around this way. So they can pull in headwise up to here and then back down into the loading dock from there. So it was designed that way. So it will be well landscaped with trees around it. The archaeology team has worked closely with us. So this is many thanks to, again, St. Mary's City. This is actually on the city's property, this parking lot. And it's a pervious pavement, which means, so here's a quick diagrammatic. So these are those concrete paver blocks. You've seen them. They kind of opened and they're filled with gravel. And so the rain comes down, and hopefully if it's a light rain, it infiltrates into the ground, and Mother Nature does its thing. If it overflows, it runs down, the parking lot slopes down, it will run down into, and it's bisected by bioretention swales or basins. So the runoff would run into those swales, which has got a special permeable soil in it, so the water goes in, and again, either through transpiration with the grasses that are there, and through the ground below, it can infiltrate there, and if it gets to the point where it's really saturated, it can go out through an outfall pipe, which is now it's filtered water, so the water it's removed the phosphorus, and you have clean water going into the St. Mary's Rivershed. So any questions on our parking lot?
What does the geotextile fabric do?
That's there to separate, the city actually asked for that. It doesn't do anything from an engineering standpoint. Water will flow through it, but it was done. This parking lot, it's unusual if you're in engineering. Normally, if you were going to build a parking lot, you'd go out there and you'd strip off all the topsoil and the top layers of dirt to get yourself good soil, and then you'd build. Well, that would be into the archaeology. So we went out there, and other than give it a good haircut, mowed the grass way down, we put the geotextile fabric right on top of the dirt and built. And it also helps keep this is a special medium, filter, so it keeps that filter where it belongs and not so it's sinking into if you have soft spots.
Was it to identify the layers? It's been a couple of years since we had this conversation. To identify the layers where the spill stopped on this project, was that part of the textile?
I believe so.
The archaeologists asked for it, I think this is where, so they can tell in the future.
I think it's pretty obvious whether they had it or not with it, where they are, because this is obviously imported material, and when they're out there, it's amazing how they can look at the earth, and to me it looks like dirt, and they look at it and it's like, oh no, that's 300-year-old dirt versus 50-year-old dirt. Okay, the building is moving along. So this is the building, and maybe if you've seen in past, and I don't want to spoil anybody's thunder, but so this is what we're going to be building starting this summer. So it's Anne Arundel Hall. It's in 3 buildings. Right now it's the south, the west, and the north building. And the Blackstone Room is this nice little 2-story space right here. You remember the old herb garden that was in Anne Arundel Hall? That's right there. And the Ladies Garden Club has already volunteered to help us get that planted and take care of it. Right now, the construction, we went through the demolition phase, and we're in what's a planned hiatus, so the archaeologists could go under into what was the crawl space of the building to do archaeology. And Ruth Mitchell's team is doing a super great job. They have found, she told me today, more things than they ever expected to find in that crawl space. Have confirmed clearly where Middle Street was. You're not going to find Middle Street because it was obviously on the top and got long ago, but they have found the ditch line, so it confirms exactly what they thought. They have found buildings that were along it where there's no buildings left, but you can, I guess the foundation post holes of the timbers that made it up, they can locate those things. So they've done a great job of that, and they'll be out of there in the late spring, at which point we will finish tearing down the excavation of the basement, and we'll start driving. There's a lot of piles that go on this building. We'll be drilling the piles in there, augured piles. So we'll start that construction and the utility work this summer. Any questions about Anne Arundel Hall? Yes?
So there will be classrooms?
Yes, okay, so this building is, that's a very good question. We'll start in the south building. So the south building is an archaeology laboratory that will be primarily occupied by Historic St. Mary's City, with occasional visits from our archaeology department doing special projects that they work on. So the laboratory is actually down here on the first floor, and it's designed as like a little, you can walk up in here and you can look in viewing windows, and hopefully you catch them when they're doing something. That's exciting. Upstairs are offices and storage spaces, and then right now the entire St. Mary's City collection of artifacts over how many years, Gina? 15, 20, 30 years of collection is in a lot. It's in the basement of those old houses. It's moving into the attic of the west building. So that's being built as not grandma's attic. This is highly specialized, climatically controlled, filtered air space for this storage of these artifacts. The second and first floor of this building is that's for our anthropology department and our museum studies curriculum. So it's got classrooms and offices. And the north building, the bottom floor is all classrooms with up on this end is the Center for the Study of Democracy. And upstairs there's some seminar rooms, a classroom, and offices for our International Languages and Cultures Department. And then at the very end is the Blackstone Room. You might remember it from, if you ever went there, inside of Anne Arundel Hall. It was right when you went in the main doors on the left. So this will replace the Blackstone Room. So it's a nice, very nice 2-story meeting space that could seat 60, 70 people in a lecture style.
I had thought that at one point the plan was to move anything student-wise across the street, so that eventually there would be no need for students to even cross Route 5 at all. I thought at some point I had heard that.
No, I think we've always wanted to maintain a robust student.
Turn screen.
There's a button.
There should be a rubber button.
Technical time.
Thank you. So, no, the plan has always been in our, for the campus to maintain a robust part of our academic program on the historic side of campus. So Kent Hall has our history and social sciences, there's history, sociology, economics, and political science programs are in Kent Hall. They'll remain there. And we've always wanted to have 15 to 20% of our academic program on the historic campus because that's our roots. That's where we started, and we really don't want to abandon the program on that side.
So right now, this building is scheduled for completion in the winter of 2016. We'll move our faculty in there over the summer after classes get out in the spring. Any questions about Anne Arundel Hall? Yes, sir. Oh, yes, that's another great point. So besides, yes, this is targeted. Of course, you don't, until they finish the building and the LEED does their certification, you don't get it. But right, the architects know what it's going to be. So it's going to be LEED Gold. We're not too far from LEED Platinum. We actually have, it's not shown in this rendering, but we have a bank of and a little less than 20 kV solar array that will go on that roof. It's heated with geothermal heat pump system is how we're heating. We're not using hot water, oil boilers. Any other questions about it? Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to Gina. Do you want the pointer? Just the red button.
All right.
And just push it down here.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. So I'm Regina Fodden, Executive Director, Historic St. Mary City. And so one of the projects, we were very pleased to see that we had 2 capital projects on the governor's 5-year capital improvement plan. We had the Interpretive Center, and that fell off during the economic downturn, and now it's back. And we have the Leonard Calvert House, which is something, when I, probably 15 years ago, Chip, the Maryland Heritage Project was developed as a capital program shared by the city and the college. The college had 8 buildings that came along under that. The city had 8 buildings that came along. And then the Anne Arundel Project was a shared facility. So in all, for many of you who've been here a long time, you've seen the tremendous growth that's happened. So the Calvert House is something that's been part of that plan for about 15 years. We have one portion of the program design which tells us what we want to do there, and then we'll get into the second part of the program where the state starts to fund something. That's when they say, okay, now break it down and what it's going to cost. But anyways, the exhibit, if you've been by the field school the last few years when they've been out there during May, June, and July, they've been digging at the Calvert House. Okay, so this is the house of Leonard Calvert. This is a place where the Act Concerning Religion was passed, where Margaret Brent saved the colony. I mean, it's a number of really significant events in the story of St. Mary City. And so the exhibit is going to be something like St. John's, which is going to look like a colonial building on the outside, but it's going to be a modern exhibit building on the inside. So if you follow the news recently, we found the foundations of the 17th century building. We found fence lines. We found all sorts of things. It's been a very interesting site because the Broom Howard, any of you who've been here in the community, wow, this is where that used to sit. What was good in the 17th century was also good in the 19th century. So this is a sketch. The Leonard Calvert House was 70 by 40 feet. And so it was a very significant building. Henry jokes and says, well, it was the first double wide in Maryland. We don't know, as far as we know. Anyway, so this is a rendering that was done some time ago, and there are probably more fences that we found and other things, but this is a general idea of what that house looked like. And we have some outbuildings as well, but right now we're just talking about the main building itself. So again, some of the things that happened there. And then we also know, of course, when the English Civil War happened, that there was a fort built around that. I don't think we'll recreate that, but we'll tell that story there. So I said, that's one of the things that's coming along, very exciting. It will complete town center, so we have Cordia's Hope, we have the Ordinary, and then we'll have, like I said, the Calvert House, and that's really where we can tell some fascinating stories about the development of the colony. So Chancellor's Point, when I arrived here a little over 5 years ago, Chancellor's Point, and many of you who've been in the community, it was a little run down, and but you can see it's a beautiful 66-acre site right there on the St. Mary's River, and you can look across to Virginia. It's right on our walking trails. Really, what had been neglected, unfortunately, was what used to be a nature center in the 1980s. And with the generosity and help of the college, the Chancellor's Point Club, volunteers from the community, we have put the walls back. We have windows in there now in the nature center. We have painted it. It is buttoned up. It is no longer home for snakes and raccoons and other things like that. Someday we're planning it will be like a study center, an open space, like I said, that people can go down and use for meetings. And when we were developing the idea, first Maggie O'Brien said, I love this site. I'm leaving the college now. There's something I would like to do down there. I have a student who's interested in helping and working with you, and we have a little bit of funds that we can put towards it, and we've made good use of those funds. We didn't know what we were going to do, so we got a group of college faculty together. So Kate Chandler is in charge of environmental studies, Jerry Gabriel, Bob Lewis from St. Mary's River Watershed has participated in that, number of people on the museum community and the college. And what we finally decided was this is a place that really should be for low-impact, environmentally friendly programs. We haven't even done the archaeology down there yet, so we really don't even know what's there. So, and it is a pristine site in some ways. We do our full moon walks down there. We do stargazing. It's a perfect place to do that. So, and part of my job as the director is to take care of state assets, and it was a shame to see the house falling down and not being able to be used. So again, it's on Rosecroft Road, 66 acres. It has a lovely beach. If any of you have ever pulled up there, it's a wonderful beach down there. And like I said, it is on our walking trails. So we've got a couple of grants that we're bringing together to make this site accessible to people in the community. Okay. So one of them is, and we thank the college for taking on procurement, which one of those terrible government words, not very interesting, but the word itself, but it helps us to hire the contractors and to figure out what we're going to do down there. So if you see I'm going to try this thing. Anyways. All right, so here's the existing road, okay, which we will resurface. It's still going to be a dirt road, but we are going to resurface that so it's safe to drive down there. So that road is going to be reconstructed. That will probably happen next calendar year. One of the things that the college is helping us with right now is we did get money through Access Maryland, which helps make state facilities accessible. So here's the road, and then we come down to the garage, which is right about here, and we're going to have some 2 ADA parking spaces, and then we'll have a path that goes from the garage up to the nature center up there that will enable people to get up to the nature center from those parking spaces. And then we don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet, but we're working on the engineering. But to come from this is that circular drive where it ends there, to have a path or boardwalk down to the beach, an ADA path or boardwalk. And that's what we're trying to figure out exactly what that iteration is going to be. But what we want is to make it universally accessible. So there'll be a viewing platform to observe the water and then actually to get you down onto the beach. So the third part of this is the National Park Service awarded us $100,000. And we do have to come up with a match. So we're using the state funds to match the federal funds and a few other things, and some of Dan's time and Chip's time and my time. And so the Park Service wants to make this, provide visitor amenities. So if you were to come there from the water to the land or the land to the water, that you would find something useful there. So these, all these little things I've given you here, these icons, where we want to put wayfinding signage. If you've been by Chancellor's Point, you can't identify it unless you know where it is. So we want to have a sign up here to say, you're at Chancellor's Point, some things to tell you, keep going to parking. Then I call this a trailhead sign in the parking lot that exists now. So if ever you get to a park and it says you are here and here's the trail and here's, that kind of thing. And then we have money for new brochures so that we can redesign those so people know what else is on site. This is Camp Flintlock. This is an old Google Earth that's not there now. But anyways, some more signage here. We also have money, and again, Henry will have to figure out where this goes, a well to provide potable water. So if you wanted to come up and you were kayaking, you could get a drink of water there, put it in your water bottle and take it with you. We also have money for 10 universal access picnic tables that will be out there, 2 composting toilets, so they don't go into the ground. These are self-contained like you have on a boat, and put them in a, like a shed so that people can use them year-round, but we don't have to dig in for a holding tank or anything like that. And then, I said, so then some signage down here as far as where you are, what the history was. We had been thinking about it down, well, these are safety warnings, and then around the nature center, because you're on the John Smith Trail, you're on the Chesapeake Bay Gateways Network, and to talk about the natural history down there, probably there's a platform on the back of the house, and we might have an ADA path to go up there. So we're not, again, we're trying to be as gentle on the ground as possible and not to intrude, or to intrude as little as possible. So, so this is where we have the nice beach where you can pull up. And then I said, eventually we'll be planning things down there. But again, the students have done the Bottom County Festival, which is sort of harkens back to the 1970s. It's sort of usually acoustic music down there, and they've been planning it. We haven't made a big deal out of it. I love the idea that they're down there, that people from the community come, but until the road's constructed and everything's, I don't really want to invite a whole lot of people until it's really a useful site. So this should be done. I said Dan is helping us with the procurement. So they said the ADA stuff in this area should be done maybe this calendar year, this summer. It depends on MDE and all the regulations. And then we're scheduled to have all of this done by September of 2015. So it'll be wonderful to have an opening, Chancellor's Point, come down and enjoy it, because we know the river is getting closed up more and more for people. And so then we'll have that open and available to people. So that's very exciting. So the Interpretive Center, which is, did I put a picture? I did. Okay, so you saw the picture of Anne Arundel Hall, okay? And the picture that Dan had a ghost in there. It didn't have the Interpretive Center in there because when we were looking at that, the Interpretive Center wasn't back on the budget. But anyway, so we did get construction funds in 2019. Right now, what's going on, when Ruth Mitchell and all the archaeologists are out there doing the mitigation, the excavation, they're doing everything that's involved with not only the Anne Arundel project, but also the Interpretive Center. All the infrastructure is going in. The college really helped move that into the Anne Arundel project, so in the hopes that the Interpretive Center would come along. So it's sort of worked out that way. So the purpose of the Interpretive Center, for anybody who hasn't heard about this in a while or isn't familiar with it, it's really a welcome center. It's going to be a 7-day-a-week facility. That's what we're really excited about, too. We close our living history exhibits for 3 months out of the year. We can't justify keeping people out there in January because it's just a little too brutal. But this will be a wonderful 4,000 square foot permanent, well, relatively permanent exhibit in there so that people can come year-round and hopefully 7 days a week to really get an idea of what's going on at historic St. Mary City. And then the orientation also to the college, talking to people about what this place is and who lives here. Also, they say, completes the entire plan that we have with Anne Arundel Hall, which really, the Interpretive Center, I said, the way we plan this is, here's Middle Street that Dan was talking about, and trying to recreate those old streets and mark it with the Interpretive Center, but then also what Anne Arundel Hall did, and what really, when I arrived, I sat down at the table with Chip and Dan from the beginning, and Henry Miller was there to plan this very carefully. There's sensitive archaeology here, there's sensitive archaeology here, and this whole building sort of steps around that. It's really been very sensitively planned. And so, that's a great strength of the partnership working together to figure out how to do this. So that's why it ends up being 3 buildings as well. So, and then again, so inside the exhibits are about the history of St. Mary City, how we found it, what it was about. We're focusing on characters, and I mean people, but the story of like Dinah Nuthead, Matthias de Souza, Daniel and Mary Clocker. So we're talking about some of the women's history here as well. Margaret Brent. We have a beautiful orientation theater. It's going to be completely flexible, so you could have exhibits. I mean, you could have programs there. You can have lectures there. A really nice facility. Seats about 80 people in there, and that's going to be wonderful. And you'll be able to look out on the city from the orientation theater. We have galleries for changing exhibits. We haven't had this before, and we can have 1 or we can have 2. They can be sectioned off. That will be wonderful. And then public restrooms. you can't have a museum without public restrooms and places for people to stop. So, so anyways, I said, so this is, and you'll see a little bit of a change here too. So here's this was where we thought the herb garden was going to go. Now Dan's talking about the herb garden over here. But anyways, here's farthings, and we believe that we want people to access the building this way. And then I said all of this is meadow. So again, for water retention and things like that. I won't get into that. I'm no expert on the stormwater management. So anyways, like I said, that's very exciting. So here's the images from, if you're at Farthing's parking lot and you're going to walk in, here's the main entrance here. This is from Route 5. We went through so many versions of this to get to something that we felt looked like a museum and that people agreed on. And we'll mark it with our fences. And then this is just a mock-up of the exhibits. And if anybody's interested, I'm always happy to show anybody who wants to know more about the exhibits, what we plan in there. Come to my office or let me tell you about it. You know, that's perfectly fine. Does I think that's, and I forgot to ask for questions. Anybody have any questions about Chancellor's Point? Yes.
It's been a while since I've been down there.
Uh-huh.
If I were to go down there tomorrow, can I drive down there? Or
No, we've been trying to be careful with Chancellor's Point. No, you can't. You can drive to the entrance, you can drive to the access road, and then you can walk down. But frankly, we've been a little shy since the reason it was falling apart was because someone drove a truck into the building when no one was down there almost 20 years ago. So we're trying to figure out how we can do that, because even one of the students, you know, sometimes they come up with the best ideas. Said, well, maybe you put a gate down at the parking lot once that's done, and then you allow people to drive that far. We have to figure out how we're comfortable monitoring that, because once we put all that public money into it, we want to make sure it's taken
but I
care
could
of.
go down there tomorrow and park at the beginning of it and walk.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things we've been thinking about too when we do the road reconstruction. I don't know how State Highways feels about this, but whether we could create a parking space or not, you know, down at the entrance, I have no idea if that's possible. But ultimately, we do want to have it open and available, at least, you know, 4-day weekends or something like that for people to get in there. That's the point of it. The Park Service said, if we're putting money into it, you need to make sure it's available to people. So we do want to figure that out. Anybody else have a question about Chancellor? Ooh, sorry. Camping? Yes, there'll be camping down there.
Because the public parks get extremely crowded, you know, like when we look out on holidays. And I don't know if we want this to turn into a massive destination in DC.
Well, people have to reserve it, you know. I think that would be a good problem to have in a way. I mean, I understand what you're saying. We used to have Boy Scouts down there. Camp Flintlock was down there for years. Somebody else probably knows more about that than I do. But, I mean, they'll have to go through us to make sure, through the management of the museum, to make sure that we go down there. Because we're going to have camping platforms, and there's going to be a certain limit to that. Because, again, you light fires and you disturb archaeology. You dig into the ground, you disturb archaeology. So that's going to be part of an education for anybody who camps down there as well.
Would fishing be allowed? Fishing? Or
I,
fish allowed, or-
There are already people fishing down there. Officially, I haven't really thought through that far. It was more about getting access and kayaking. I don't know how that works when people are pulling up and maybe in bare feet and someone's been fishing there, and whether they get hooks. And I just haven't looked into how those two things work together. I was more interested in kayaking, but maybe we do it on one side and we do the kayaking on the other.
Is there any plans to extend the trails?
The 5 miles of trails that we have going through the woods, not at this point. One of the things that I would love to do is to figure out how to make those more accessible. I have a friend whose daughter is handicapped, and she can't walk, but she can get on a Segway. And she got through a fair number of our paths, and she said, it's so wonderful because I never get to go out into nature. I can get around a city, but I can't get into the woods. And so she visited maybe 3 years ago, and I'm trying to figure out what that looks like, but I just haven't had the time to see how far we could get, maybe with even providing a paved path down to Chancellor's Point across some of the woods. Or something. I'm maybe getting ahead of myself, but right now there isn't. But I would really love to figure out how to enable people to get that, more people to get that experience, and those who are maybe not as able to get through hiking and just on the rough trails that we have now. Some of them are very narrow, so it would take more engineering than I know how to do. But I would love it, because we have so many people who go in there. I don't even count them. And I'd love to count them, how many people use that site. They were all out from the college today, walking around enjoying the beautiful day. And that's what we're here for. Did you have a question?
It's similar to that. I work with older people, and I like to take them out on day trips. They have canes, walkers, and wheelchairs.
Right.
Is any of that, that's what I want to make, was any of that be accessible? They love history. The same with the archaeology buildings, are there elevators and that kind of stuff? I was just-
Oh, certainly, any of those facilities, like on the main campus and any of the classroom buildings, all have to be accessible. As far as Chancellor's Point, again, that's where I'm trying to figure out how to do that. Because my dad is 84 and he comes and visits and we have to drive here and then we drive there. We do have a grant tied up in procurement for 2 people movers. So we hope to be able to get people around our site. We'll be able to move about 16 people at a time. Chancellor's Point is going to require a lot more thought about how to get down there because we have a forest management plan down there. It's critical areas, so we'll see what we can do. But
Yeah, suggestion is just some kind of small, like a golf cart thing, because a lot of them can get in a vehicle, if that's to get them around, other than pushing a wheelchair.
yeah, oh yeah, no, that wouldn't work at this point. I understand, and I appreciate that, and that is the vision, to be able to get everybody down there.
Mayor, if you're gonna have a park down with camping, are you gonna have a park ranger down there to oversee it?
And that's what we need to figure out, because we are so stretched as far as our staff goes. If we can figure out how to do maybe what Point Lookout does, drop $3 in a bucket, maybe we can have a student, down there during the summer, or someone who's looking for some part-time work. That's what we need to do to make sure that, like I said, if it's not locked up, that somebody's down there in case anybody had a problem too, to make sure that there's somebody to call or to, reach out for help. So that's the part I haven't figured out yet, but that's ultimately what we want to do when we're open. Yes?
Thanks for doing this. This isn't specific to Chancellor's Point, it's sort of an overview of a presentation. We get the public financing in place. Is there any plan to mount a private fundraising campaign for some of the elements of these projects?
No, hadn't actually headed in that direction, but certainly we could think about it. Like I said, we're getting a lot of things in place, and then we could see also once people get to the site, once we're a little bit farther along, and then say, we're ready to open, could we get some help from the community? I mean, the community is always very generous to us, but that's a good thought, Larry. About private funding, I didn't repeat the question. Anybody else? Yes?
You made a reference to arrival by boat, I thought. Is there going to be a pier?
No. What the National Park Service, when the program managers came down to visit us, they said, we want to make this, they're trying to raise awareness about the trails, the water trails, and they're not finding that people really have a concept of that as a way to experience historic sites. And so they're talking about when you have a kayak or a canoe. They don't want motorboats there. It's really about that sort of low impact, soft landing there.
Yeah, I can, Regina, I guess I just want to reinforce the idea of keeping the parking lot as far away from the point as possible and keeping the integrity of the paths and the woods. You've mentioned that, it's a challenge for you to figure out what to do, but I'm just trying to stress to keep the parking up near Rosecroft Road.
Well, there
so
is
people can't, access.
Well, there is an existing parking lot here. So when I'm
well,
talking, and this what I'm talking about, and and then please comment again. But anyway, so this is just 2 parking spaces. So again, if someone who has mobility problems can get to the nature center if we're having a program or something's going on down there, and there's a simple path that's going to go to the nature center. And I said, this is a very difficult area to develop anything. So when we're talking about a parking lot, all I'm trying to do is make the existing parking lot more stable. So there are sort of recycled rubber materials that you can get that almost lay down like a carpet. And it has minimal impact, and maybe there's something even better than when I wrote this grant. You put a couple inches of gravel, like I said, that's already a parking lot, and then you put that rubberized paver, I don't know what to call it, on top of it. And so it's just make sure that people can get out and be stable on the ground. And it's a pervious, it was pervious, whichever the good one is, pervious. So does that make, so they said.
Yeah, I guess I just want to say, I like the idea that you mentioned of parking up by the road and having another kind of bus or something to take people down so they can appreciate it rather than penetrating the area with a lot of cars.
Right.
Because it's such a beautiful, and I've walked that thing so many times in my life, and it's just wonderful. And I don't particularly want to, you know what I'm saying.
Oh, absolutely, Fred. So
But leave it sort of as it is and get rid of the parking lots and plant grass or trees or something or bushes and keep them out by the road
Right.
and bring them in by buses if they're handicapped. But I think it's something you really should stress. This is a walking area for people. It's just what I feel.
Okay, well, I mean, if we're talking about large groups, I mean, certainly we would have to bus them in. There is not enough, the parking that I've promised the national park, that I proposed to the National Park Service is 20 spaces. That's all. And so, and if we were to have a big event down there, I'm talking about a Chautauqua, I'm talking about the type of things that people in this community like, we would have to be busing them in. There isn't adequate parking down there for a big deal. If we're going to run that, we're going to figure out how to do, I don't know, we'll rent buses or whatever it happens to be as part of the program. But I appreciate that. And that's one of the reasons that we want to do low impact here, because it's a dark space. And that's why we do the stargazing down there. People love that space. So and I appreciate your comments, because we do want to hear it. I'm a little nervous talking about this because people are very invested in St. Mary's City in many, many ways and care deeply about it. So I'll keep that in mind. And again, if we put the parking out in Rosecroft, that's just a concept in my brain. I haven't got any farther than that. Like I said, I have no idea what the county would say or SHA would say about that. We just want, it bothers me when people stop their cars in sort of a precarious position outside and then, you know, climb in. I would much rather find a safe way for them to feel like they can park, there's an adequate space, they can get down to the access road if it's not open. And again, part of the mission of Historic St. Mary's City is for the enjoyment of the public to take this space in, so I appreciate it.
Do you plan on sponsoring concerts in the future, people like Dr. Ben Carson, that type of thing again?
That was a rental. We did not sponsor that. They asked to rent the site. We said, please, it cannot be political in any way, and we are not affiliated with any political party. I said, so it was promoted as if we were sponsoring it. Again, it was a site rental for us, like a wedding or anything else we did. I didn't attend that. I heard there were about 300 or 400 people. People enjoyed the concert. But I said, that's...
Very well attended. Everybody enjoyed it. It was great.
Okay.
You did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I take it seriously, like I said, because I know my job is just to take care of the place that people care about already. So, any more questions about Chancellor's Point? Okay. Then I skipped over to the Interpretive Center. Any questions about the Interpretive Center? This is really a dream come true for us, and especially the portion of Anne Arundel Hall where we get all our bits and pieces, as Silas says, over into a really state-of-the-art facility. It's going to be wonderful. They're great gains for the museum.
Just a question in that area, not about the center per se, but a few years ago, there was at the top of the road, I don't know the name of the road, a farmer's market or a tailgate market, small.
This up here?
It was at the intersection of 5.
Oh, yes.
Is there any desire, I like those kind of things, just a personal thing, but is there any desire to encourage that, bring that back? And if so,
Well, we did one last year. It's run by our volunteer, Mary Alves, who was our landscape curator before. She ran that with the volunteers, the garden market. And last year, I think we might have made a bad choice, or maybe a different choice. Anyway, we put it in front of the State House because some of our volunteers didn't exhibit a really wonderful exhibit of textiles and quilting and other things. And so we made it part art exhibit, part garden market. But we are doing it again. And so I'm not sure if we're doing it right back on Route 5, but we know that we missed an opportunity by not putting the sign out because everybody's used to seeing it, and right around Mother's Day. That's what really drives a lot of the market, too, is to make sure it's approximate to Mother's Day. So it's on our calendar, and I think it's the week before Mother's Day. But we are
like a farmer's market.
A farmer's market?
They used to sell some food on the corner, I thought, a few years ago.
They did it every Friday during the river concerts, or before the river concerts. It would be this farmer's market over there, selling vegetables and fresh baked goods, and then you would go to the river concert. That was a few years ago.
Okay, because maybe not in my time. Do you remember that, Chip? Okay, I can look into it.
It was pretty popular.
Okay, all right. I'm not sure who ran it, but so I'd be happy to look into it. Okay. So, if there are no more questions about any of the projects, yes.
I had, a couple years ago, there were some exhibits here at the college that were Smithsonian Museum based.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any thought to having that as part of the exhibits in the new interpretive hall?
Okay, well, the Between Fences exhibit that came, Yeah, we did that together. I did an art project with some of the schools that was part of that. So that was a partnership, and it was over in the Boyden Gallery. It's a wonderful exhibit. We had that at the museum I was at before. So it's a competitive thing. They go through the state humanities councils. And so there's one out now. It's about music. And so that Between Fences one seemed very good for us to talk about land use and all that kind of thing. So that type of thing comes along once in a while, and like I said, it's a competitive thing. In order to get Smithsonian exhibits like what they have over at Amory Gardens, you get that if you're an affiliate of the Smithsonian. I haven't looked that deeply into it. We have so many things that nobody's even seen from St. Mary's City, but that could be something that could go into the into the temporary galleries. There's a fee associated with that, but there are also a lot of benefits that come along with the Smithsonian affiliation. So I think it's something that we just haven't had a chance to look into. But I walked over to I was walking around Amory Gardens and thought, wow, that really, I can see the great benefit of having all those wonderful sculptures and those pieces and the access that they have to training and programs and all that. So it's a good idea to look into anyways. Okay. Well, thank you all for your comments. And you know where to find me, probably over on Rosecroft Road, 18559 Hogaboom Lane, or I'm on the website. If you ever want to find me and talk to me about any of the projects that are going on or give me any input, we'd really appreciate it. And now it's my job to introduce Bob Lewis, who's the Executive Director of the St. Mary's River Watershed Association, to talk about the oyster reef. So thank you.
So I'll start with the technology here. They asked me to send the presentation over ahead of time, and I always figure it's going to be, dovetailed in somehow. So I kept it playing, but it said it ended. Good thing we have coaching here. And what is it, F5? What plays it?
That is a little bit down at the bottom right corner of the page with the projector.
This one? All right, again, good evening. My name is Bob Lewis. I think when we talked about all these other projects, it's kind of understood that, we're on a state museum and college academic campus, and so these projects make perfect sense. But we talk about oysters, maybe I need to go back a little bit and say, well, why oysters? So I stole these slides from Drs. Tanner and Paul, who did a presentation on this not long ago. So I give thanks to them tonight. They're not here, and if you don't tell them, then I won't get in trouble. But oysters, the Chesapeake Bay was full of oyster reefs. They're three-dimensional structures, grew up from the bottom, especially down the south part of the bay. They were referred to by the colonists who sailed in the waters as rocks, and they frequently went aground on them, and many a vessel was lost. These reefs, these rocks, are unique ecosystems, support a diversity of animals, and they provide services to the Chesapeake Bay that make it a unique estuary. Believed by many scientists to be one of the most productive estuaries in the world per acre. So, of course, they provide for nutrient uptake and sequestration, as I call it, a bad word these days. I guess they didn't realize that. And filtration. They filter the water. They take the suspended solids in the water out of the water column, clarifying the water, allowing the light to penetrate through the water so the grasses can grow on the bottom. They also provide for unique habitat, very complex habitat that invites in other species, particularly the young of the species, and protect them from predation. So why are they gone? As I said, the bay was made of these things. They were in rocks, and those rocks are all gone. Now it's deep water and mud bottom. So I give you a timeline here. The hand tongs in the 1680s, dredges came along, so we could scoop them up at 4 and 5 times the rate. Then in the 1950s, dermo disease was introduced. It's a Pacific disease from the coast of China, began in the Gulf of Mexico. 59, MSX was first detected, again, another Asian Pacific disease. I believe that one started more in the northern waters and worked its way south. I think it was first detected off the coast of New Jersey. And then in the 1990s, we see this major population crash, and for a variety of reasons. Here we look at the harvest. I kept a couple of these slides because I think they just, they're kind of shocking if you haven't seen them before, but I'm going to skip through them pretty fast. But you can see here how the harvest levels go down very, very quickly. And I should note that throughout time, we get better and better at harvesting these things, especially when we start talking about the 1970 or so on, when we get major electronics to be able to locate natural resources and extract them. This looks more recently, 1953 on, both at Virginia and Maryland. And again, we see the collapse in harvest levels. Some of the historic shots here. It's a skipjack out on the bay with the dredges. You can see the contraptions. I brought my pointer here. So this is the dredge. He's pulling up over the side. These are, I think, hand-cranked winches to haul them in. That's Shucking House. I can't remember which one this is. It's a schooner in front of it, a dredging schooner. That's probably half the winter's worth of shell from that one Shucking House. That one is Crisfield, Maryland. And again, that's getting toward the close of winter. That's probably a March picture. And again, just 1 year's worth of shell. It's 1 year's worth of shell. So what are the consequences of losing the oysters? The pollution is no longer abated. We don't have the filtering, the sequestration of the nutrients. We have more sediments clouding the water column. The grasses can't grow. The oysters don't survive. They get smothered under the silts. We have harvesting pressures. We lose the structures. We lose the reefs. The oysters are down in the bottom. So our goals here of building an oyster restoration project, and again, I stole this from Drs. Tanner and Paul. I think I would have said some of this a little differently, but basically for ecological reasons, to bring back the ecology of the oyster reef ecosystem, to have a living classroom, a place where we can monitor and study oysters, a place that we can experiment on different types of restoration practices and see what works and what doesn't work, and then also to provide outreach opportunities so that we can educate the public and get them involved, try to personalize our natural environment, and reconnect people with their natural world, which is important for people that are in the generation that's very slightly represented here tonight. We have 2 young people, and the rest of us, we all have somewhat of a connection to a natural world, but a lot of the children today do not. So here's our location of the site, St. Mary's College. This is the old campus, the newer campus. Let's see, Lexington Park would be probably just above the peak of the roof. Point Lookout's down there in the basement. And here's our project site. This is Campus Drive. This is a look at the Tanner Paul design of our project. And again, the State Route 5 goes right along here, very close to the water. Campus Drive would be right about here. We have different colors here. We're building 3 rows of 3-dimensional structures. These structures are built very tall. They're built to 1 foot from mean low water. Some of these structures are 6 or 7 feet tall. and the different colors represent different type structures and different treatments. We have two types of structure. One is concrete rubble, and the other is made of reef balls that are stacked. And then the treatments that we use with 3 different treatments. And one of those is actually no treatment, to do nothing with them, to just see how the natural strike is on the concrete products. Then we have treatment of oyster shell only. And then another treatment where we actually put down oyster shell that has baby oyster spat struck on them. This is a diagram from Hargis Haven of what they believe the historic oyster reefs look like that actually came to the surface of the water and formed what they call these rocks. So you have this old core of old dead oysters, and then the live oysters on the top in more like a veneer. And so we took that diagram, and we're going to make our core out of the concrete rubble or the stacked reef balls in here, and then we put the veneer or the various treatments on the outside, or in the case of no treatment, we hope that the natural oyster grows. So of course, outreach, we got to build these products. We're trying to do it with as economically as we can. This is a charter school. I believe they call themselves the Environmental Club, a variety of different ages, making reef balls. This is up at Shadyside. This is a Rotary Project Day, building reef balls 30 at a time. This is our contractor out on the river with his barge, putting reef balls in the water. There's a shot of the concrete rubble that we were using. As you can see, they're rather large pieces. And we've built a couple of the mounds out there with smaller pieces, but most of them are these very large pieces because our research tells us that the greater the interstitial spaces between each piece of concrete will provide for more penetration and more water flow and a better habitat. So what we give up maybe in surface area, we gain back in more water flow. Again, the contractor out on the river, I'm sure many of you drove by and saw them out there. I see the heads nodding. Martin putting a reef ball in the river. This is a shot, and I thank Chris Tanner for this photograph. This was not in his set of slides, and it should have been. We got out there one day, I think this was March a year ago, and the water was clear. We got this shot. This is 5 feet of water. Those reef balls reach 2 feet tall, and they're stacked 2 layers high. So what we can see there are 12 reef balls, but underneath them is another 19 that are supporting them. And you can see there's a lot of interstitial space, a lot of space both inside the reef balls and in between them. That's kind of the concrete rubble structures. Here's our oyster nursery. We've had it at the St. Mary's College waterfront for 2 summers now. This big blue tank, people ask me, what's the blue tank? I always say it's an oyster jacuzzi. We fill the tank with 100 bushels of shell, just oyster shell, clean shell. And then we introduce larvae we purchased from the state hatchery in Horton Point. We introduced 2.5 million larvae at one time. That's kind of the darkness in the water. It looks like muddy water. Actually, 2.5 million is about a big tablespoon of what looks like coffee grounds, and it actually comes in a coffee filter. And it costs a lot of money for that. It's like $550. And this is my program director, Allison Regilla. She's currently a senior here at St. Mary's College. She's introducing, and she's also describing the project to the students behind her in the Ecosystems of Coastal Ecology class, I believe it's called. This is the college Rotaract Club. They're out on the river. I believe this particular day they were applying a veneer of just shell. Some days it kind of looks the same, and they're out there and they're applying spat-on shell. And the spat-on shell that we raised in that nursery right down there at the college waterfront. And we support college research projects and high school student research projects. This is Liz Lee. She's looking at settlement on different substrates. Got some graphs to show what she found. You can see here that the larger bar indicates that the oyster shell was the preferred substrate for the strike. Concrete came in about halfway, and PVC, which is plastic pipe, they still like it, and they sat on it. It's amazing, but not as much. But then I thought what was interesting, she looked at the survival over time. So it's the beginning of the mortality rates, and here's another graph looking at it over time. And you can see that the oysters grow much faster on the oyster shell. So I'm not sure why that is, but I mean, we do this experiment over and over again. If we keep getting the same results, I guess we got to believe it, right? You know, oyster shell is a hard commodity to come by, and it's very expensive. We're paying $3 a bushel for it. Those mountains of oyster shell, you know, they get put out in the river for restoration and also for aquaculture. And you don't see mountains like that anymore. And if you do, the people who own them they're like gold hoarders. They won't let them loose. Here's another student project, Hannah Coe. She's looking at the colonization in the oyster reef materials, particularly looking at the diversity. Here's some of her project. Unfortunately, she did most of her project near shore, and a big blow came along. I think we called it the remnants of a tropical storm, and blew her project ashore. But she did collect data up to that point. I was going to look up what amphipods are because we're talking about them, but I forgot to, and I'm not a scientist. So we'll take them out, look at it without that, and we can see that there's quite a variety of animals, and they certainly prefer the oyster shell over just the concrete. So outcomes, and this is looking back over just a little more than a year. So far, we've constructed 11 concrete rubble reefs, treated 4 of those with shell veneer and 4 of them with spat-on shell. We've constructed 17 reef ball mounds, and again, with similar treatments. We have 4 reef ball mounds that we have currently reserved for an in situ experimentation this coming summer. I'll talk more about that. We planted control areas, about 1.2 acres, exactly adjacent to the reef structures. And again, our control areas are the typical restoration practices throughout Maryland for the last 30 years. And so we can make comparisons, see what, whether one is better than the other. We already have our hypothesis, and I think what we're seeing out there, definitely the 3-dimensional structures are better. They cost more, though. We raised 14 million spat in our nursery at the college waterfront. Of course, we planted them all in the river. We have Marylanders Grow Oysters project, and there are several of you here in the room, at least 3 in the room in our program. They host cages of oysters at their piers, steward them through the first 10 months of their life. That's the most vulnerable part of their lives. And then when we introduce them into the river, they have a higher survivability. And throughout the last 14 and a half months or so, we've held more than 70 workday events engaging 447 volunteers, including 9 paid student interns. Of those 447, 46 were St. Mary's College students. We've supported 9 student research projects, 3 of them high school STEM projects, collected baseline data, water quality parameters, reef morphology, and mapping data, and we'll continue that this summer. We'll refine that work this summer. Developed working partnerships with 17 local businesses, hired local watermen to assist with the project, presented the project to civic groups, quite a number of civic groups actually, and this is my second presentation in this venue. We've raised over $135,000 in grants to fund the project, and $8,000 from individual donors, people just like you, and in fact, as I look around the room, a good number of the people in the room have given to this project, and we are grateful for that. At this point, we have completed 92% of the design, and of course, we maintain all our permit requirements and reporting requirements on grants. So looking ahead, we're going to complete the last of the reefs and the treatments. We're going to implement the in-situ experimentation this summer. This was funded through a Maryland Industrial Partnerships grant. The college wrote for that grant and got it in partnership with Short Thing Shellfish and the Watershed Association. And I wanted to come up with a slide for this, and I know they had photos, but nobody answered an email for 2 weeks, and I'm not sure why. A couple phone calls, too, I couldn't get returned. So I have a feeling the people at Short Thing that I need to talk to are probably vacationing in Arizona. That seems to be where they like to go, so maybe they have family there. But what we do is we take a 10-foot cylinder. It's a 10-foot wide, 10-foot tall cylinder, open at the top, open at the bottom, and they set it in the river in about 5 feet of water. And inside of it, we'll have reef ball structures, and then we introduce the larva right in the tank. And so we strike the oysters in the river, in situ. They started this experimentation last year in St. George Creek, and so this is a follow-on this year to try it in different areas. And also, they originally looked at it for the purpose of aquaculture, and we want to look at this for the purposes of restoration. Of course, we'll continue to measure and document the reef structure, verify mapping, water quality parameters, all sorts of data like that. We'll continue to support research projects both at the high school and college level. And we hope to develop informed estimates of the project filtration. You know, oysters are filter feeders, and everybody talks about how an adult oyster filters 50 gallons of water a day. And many of the scientists tell me that every now and then you can find an oyster that can do that, but that's not really what every oyster does. So we want to come up with some realistic numbers. But we believe by summer, a year from now, that we'll probably be going over 1 billion gallons a day in filtration. I put the major donors on here. I'm not going to read through this, but we are certainly grateful to these people. Also put John Giusti's photograph up there. John is our most dedicated volunteer for this year. And just on this project alone, he donated 249 hours I logged. So with that, questions, and I would remind everyone that they will be posting this on the CDA folder of their website, and you certainly can call and ask me questions, write to me anytime. Roy.
Bob, you're doing a great job, outstanding. What I would like to ask you is, what mortality rate have you seen for your oysters?
Well, of course, it's too early in our project to say much about mortality. I will say that when we go from the nursery tank out into the open river, we're looking at between 5 and 15% mortality. And a lot of that has to do with how long we can leave them in the tank before we move them. Generally speaking, we do an exchange in the tank every week. So the oysters are about 5 days old in that time. I mean, when I say 5 days old, they're actually 2 weeks old when we introduce the larva. But they're 5 days of spat, they're 5 days at that point in their life of being attached to shell. And so they're little itty-bitty specks. Even with my glasses, I really can't see them, although my project director, Allison, would go, look, there's one here, there's one there, and I'd get my magnifying glass out, and they would be there. So, they're very, very vulnerable at that age. We find that if we can leave them in the tank for about 2 weeks, we can reduce that mortality of about 15% down to 5%, just moving them out of there. If we leave them in there for 3 weeks, we're starting to see the mortality creep up again. And the reason is because as they begin to grow, they need to eat. And we only have a 10,000-gallon water acquisition and discharge back into the river, 10,000 gallons a day. So we can only flow so much food and water through the tank. And if they start growing, they get to a point where they don't have enough food, then of course they're under stress, and you're going to have that survival rate. Others? Make my job easy. Okay, again, I'm available anytime. Give me a call. My email is there. And with that, I'll turn the microphone over to Vice President Chip Jackson.
Thank you, Bob. This is a terrific project and a great example of community work. There are a lot of, as the slide showed, a lot of folks in the community have supported this project, and the college is very happy and pleased to be do our part as well. Thank you all for coming out tonight. If there are any follow-up questions on any of the projects, I guess this is your last chance. If not, then I thank you, and we do have a question. Renee?
I just want to ask about the Route 5, the center medium strip concrete, whatever is going now.
That's all gone, yes.
Thank you.
And if there are not any other questions, Roy?
One last thing about 5 is you still have the same principle of slowing the traffic, and with that, of slowing the traffic, with that also slowing possible emergency response to calls in the Vicinity County by our emergency folks, sheriff, ambulance, police, whatever.
Yeah, the question is, as part of Route 5, part of the goal was to slow down the speed of vehicles and whether that affects emergency management vehicles. We did a lot of work with the emergency community, the fire department, the rescue squad, during the design, and the widths that Dan talked about, the 12-foot travel lanes and the 4-foot bike lanes, meets all their needs and standards. They're very happy with that end result. Even when we had, what Renee asked the question about medians, early designs had medians, and we'd worked that out to meet their requirements as well. So our goal is not to do anything to impede the needs of those responders to what they need to do to keep us all safe. But by narrowing the shoulders and adding sidewalks and providing street lighting, we provide pathways for students and the community that is safer than currently walking in the road or in the shoulder. And the engineers tell us that by doing that, just the visuals of driving down the road will adjust such that people will naturally slow down a bit. And we did earlier studies. This posted at 30 miles an hour, the speed limit. We don't have any interest in reducing that. But the average speeds were over 40 miles an hour. And by this treatment, the traffic engineers think people will start to slow down naturally because they'll see it as a different place and drive more closer towards that speed limit. So we hope that we've improved safety, we've maintained the throughput for the emergency vehicles that need to be, and everything works well. Thank you very much. This was great. Appreciate your interest in coming out tonight, and stay in touch.